What's up, everybody? It's Ned Bellavance, nedinthecloud.com. Thanks for tuning in, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about building a better user security experience. And this is important if you're planning on rolling out some security tools to your end users or building a solution in-house. And in order to relate the importance of a better or even good user security experience, I want to tell you a story. A few days ago, my daughter wanted to play Just Dance on our Xbox. Now that seems like a pretty straightforward request. We own the game, we have an Xbox. This should be easy to do. So I started up the Xbox, put in the game, and she doesn't have a profile, but I figure that's okay because there's an option to sign in without the profile. We do so, we launch the game, and once we launch the game, it tells us, you can't play the game without a profile. So let's create a profile for her. I try signing in with her Microsoft account, which has a long, complex password that is painful to punch in using a game controller, but hey, I wouldn't want to use an insecure password. And of course, her password has expired. I thought we weren't doing that anymore, but okay, fine. So now I have to reset her password from a web browser, which I do on my phone, generating a new complicated password using my password manager, since you need to have a password manager these days. Once I reset the password, I log back into the Xbox using her profile and punch in the new, long, complex password. At this point, it's been 10 minutes. We're still not playing the game. I try and launch the game, and now it says that the game isn't approved for her because I have parental controls on. And despite knowing her birth date, Xbox is still restricting her to E for Everyone games. So I have to sign in using my profile on the Xbox and approve the game. Now, that should be the end of it. At this point, we're 15 minutes in. We've launched the game using her profile, and now the game says in order to play, you either need a Kinect controller, which we don't have, or a mobile phone with the app installed, which we also don't have. Well, since we don't have either of those things, I tell her to go grab the old Android phone she has in her room. She brings down the phone, we install the Just Dance app, except now Google needs me to approve the app on her phone because I have parental controls enabled on her phone. I approve the app request from my phone and it finally installs, at which point we launch the app and it asks us for the access code, but there is no code. The game screen has no access code anywhere. And that's when I realized that this is the app for Just Dance 2023, and we're playing Just Dance 2018. Naturally, there's a different app instead of simply using the existing app. The game displays a QR code on the screen to help find the correct app. Despite my better judgment regarding QR codes, I scan it only to be told that the app is not compatible with our version of Android. It requires an older version of Android, which... What? It has now been 25 minutes, and we have not yet been able to play the game. I look at her, she looks at me, we sigh and give up on Just Dance 2018 and go have a dance party upstairs. There's actually more to the story, but I think I've made my point. What should have been a trivial task turned into a laborious process that took 25 minutes and ended in failure. This is an example of a terrible user experience, and while security wasn't the only factor, it certainly caused the most issues. Upon reflecting on this terrible experience, I was reminded of so many frustrating experiences that I've had with various software and systems over the years. And based on those experiences, I have some observations I'd like to share with you if you're trying to build a better experience for your end users or purchase a tool that has a good end user experience. Now, what do I mean by end users? I don't necessarily mean the actual customers of your company. I'm talking about the people who are using the software you build or purchase. They might be fellow employees, contractors, or customers. All of these people are end users, and part of our job as technologists is to try and make the technology disappear and help users accomplish their goals. The first thing I want to mention is that when you're doing acceptance testing for any piece of software or solution, you have to make sure that the users doing the acceptance testing are the actual users of the system, and the test scenario mirrors something approaching reality. I can guarantee that the groups responsible for my Xbox experience never had to sit with an increasingly impatient 10-year-old as they fumbled through an obtuse and confusing jumble of technologies. If they had, my experience wouldn't exist. Because they lacked the context of actual end users, they implemented an arcane experience, one that only felt simple and intuitive to them. Which leads me to my next big point. You, as the designer or operator of the system, have extensive knowledge and context for how the system works, much more than the average user. What that means is, 1, you're navigating the system with expert knowledge that 99% of people do not possess. And number 2, you understand and are willing to forgive inconveniences in the user experience because you know what's going on behind the scenes. Now, I'm a technical professional, which means I have a pretty good idea of why everything was happening with the Xbox and the game. I understand Xbox uses a Microsoft account, which is using Azure Active Directory. I understand that apps have a certain shelf life and that newer versions of Android don't always support older apps for perfectly good security reasons. I understand that passwords sometimes expire, shouldn't be reused, and should be at some level of complexity. I understand all of this, and I found myself making excuses for the bad experience because I have context. But the thing to keep in mind here is when a user experience is bad, it's not the user's fault. It's our fault. It's the fault of the developers and technologists who put it in place. We shouldn't make excuses for the bad experience. We should find a way to make the bad experience better. The next point I want to bring up is that the experience we had with the Xbox and the applications was not really a designed experience. It was an experience that was cobbled together with a bunch of different solutions that are rooted in enterprise technologies generally consumed by adults. It's not that adults don't play Xbox games. Far from it, I do. But adults are far from the only users. If you're going to design a great user experience, it has to be deliberate. Of course, you can reuse things you already have, but you need to either abstract those services to make the experience better or build something new that streamlines the experience for the end user. This is a pattern I've seen with so many security products intended for non-technical users. The solution itself is cobbled together from a bunch of highly sophisticated services and tools, and the end user is expected to adapt their process to fit the solution rather than the other way around. We expect that end users will be patient, that they will read the manual, that they will follow the on-screen instructions, and that they'll be okay with things taking a little bit longer than they expect. Which begs the question, have you met end users? Have you talked to them? They've got things to do, and the last thing they want to do is learn about TLS certificates or provisioning API tokens. They just need that TPS report for Bob like 10 minutes ago. If you want users to have a good experience with their applications, you have to internalize the fact that users are not going to read the manual. They're not going to read the instructions on the screen. They're going to do the bare minimum for security, if not outright try to circumvent it. And they're going to plow ahead of whatever wizard you put in front of them. That's not an indictment of users. They have stuff to do, and that stuff is not acquiring an in-depth knowledge of elliptical curve cryptography. Knowing that information ahead of time allows you to design an experience that takes those things into account. The last thing I want to mention is that of priorities. I've heard lots of companies say things like, security is our top priority, and I think that's a misguided approach. The top priority for a company, and the technology departments in particular, is to provide services that empower users to do their jobs effectively and efficiently. However, when security is made a higher priority than the user experience, the users will either ignore the security or actively work around it. For that reason, when you're designing a user experience, security should absolutely be a priority, but not the priority. And you need to find a way to make the security invisible or simple to the end user. The best user experiences are the ones where the interface and the security is invisible. It's kind of like good IT operations. A good, well-run ops team is one that nobody talks about or notices. And a well-designed user experience is a user experience that no one notices. It's intuitive and it's easy to use. So as you're preparing to design, develop, or even purchase tools to augment the user experience for your end users, please keep in mind these 3 key points. Have those doing the development and testing actually talk to real users of the software and understand what they're trying to accomplish. Develop or select solutions that are invisible to the end user whenever possible or minimally invasive when not. And ensure that security is not a priority over the user experience itself, or users will simply not use the product. At least, those are my thoughts. What do you think? If you'd like to continue the conversation, I can be found on LinkedIn or leave a comment down below. Thanks for watching. Stay healthy, stay safe out there. Bye for now.